English Premier League referee Mark Clattenburg talks candidly to FBTV about the joys and pitfalls of officiating in one of the world's most glamorous leagues. And I caught up with him at Lions Stadium before he took control of the Lions v Mitchelton clash. Firstly, Mark, welcome to Australia.
Thank you very much. It's a privilege to be here. And when Ted Keeney asked us to come out, he's been trying to get us here for about 10 years now, and it was an exciting moment to be given the opportunity. And I thank Queensland Lions for giving me the opportunity to referee a match, and it gives the Australian referees a chance to see me firsthand instead of watching us on the TV and the EPL, to watch us, and hopefully they'll learn something. If they take a little bit of learning, hopefully they'll develop into better referees, and hopefully we'll see the next FIFA referee and go on to be the next World Cup referee.
Tell us a little bit about your time here. Tell us what you've done in your stay in Australia.
Yeah, I've been here for about 2 weeks, and I was asked by the ICC international competition to referee Real Madrid Roma, which it was an amazing experience to referee for myself, to referee on the MCG, where it's the home of cricket. It was a surreal moment, because every time I've watched the MCG on TV, it's always the Boxing Day Test match, which England always lose. But to referee a football match there was just amazing. And I came up to Brisbane on Wednesday, and I did some workshop with the local referees, which was an amazing experience to listen to their experience, but also to pass on my experiences. And you know, I'm not the most perfect referee. Yes, I referee in one of the biggest and probably the most exciting leagues in the world. But hopefully I'll give them a little bit of my insight. Hopefully that'll make them better referees. And we've had some functions, and then this game today, which, you know, for me it's an amazing experience to be able to referee a match in Australia.
About the background to what happened and why Ed Sheeran's up there.
It's interesting because when I become a full-time referee, I won't use the word professional, because I think everybody, even in this room, are professional in what they do and what they want to achieve. But yeah, I'm full-time, and we have protocols in place which are important. One of the protocols, for example, that we signed into 2 years ago, because we have some not serious issues in England, but we have world football about match fixing. So one of the issues that we decided to do was to turn our mobile phones off 1 hour and a half before kick-off, which I believe is important, so we can't be accused of anything. But one of the other protocols that we had in place was that we must, on a Premier League match, we arrive at the hotel within 4 hours before match. We all travel in together in a people carrier, and after the match, we then leave in a people carrier, and we get back to the hotel, and then we travel home in our usual transport, which is car. Some guys go get a train, some guys get a flight. On this occasion, it was West Bromwich Albion v Crystal Palace. I was dying to go and see Ed Sheeran, so instead of going to my boss and saying, guys, I'm going to go and see Ed Sheeran tonight, I decided to do it myself. I still arrived at the hotel before the game, still prepared, did the game, which wasn't the best game I've had in my life, but that's not unusual. And after the match, I did my usual, wait for the managers. Mr. Warnock didn't come in, but later on he did, and I was already gone. And I left probably, not on time, but probably just a little bit earlier, but didn't get the people carrier home. So what the company did was they decided that I'd broken protocol, and I wasn't happy at the time, of course, but when I reflected, I learned something. The protocols were in place for my benefit, and I got a one-match ban for it, and it made us realise that I was a bit selfish and tried to do something that I shouldn't have done. And it was important that I followed these protocols because they were there for my benefit, and you know, I took the punishment. I certainly learned from that mistake, and that's what probably makes a good referee. What I've seen in referees in the past is to learn from the mistakes, and I've certainly learned from it. The amount of press media and coverage of this was unreal. It was on front page of the national newspapers. Ed Sheeran loved it because the tour managers give us free tickets for everywhere he wants to go, because he got more publicity than I did. And even fans now, every time I turn up in stadiums, they want to play Ed Sheeran music, which actually I think I got the big taken out of this more than I should have. That was something I've learned from.
So I just realised Eddie's looked a wee bit uncomfortable there, sitting next to an Englishman. I might move things around. If you swap with Chris, and I'll sit next to you, because I've got a question for you.
Okay, what's the scope?
There's going to be trouble here.
Okay,
you don't know history. And Eddie, I was going to ask you, going back somewhat in your career, because you're nearly as old as I am.
I'm not that old, though.
when you were in Scotland and the promotional system that was in operation there, is you usually had to come to Australia to make your name.
Yeah, but when we talk about adversity, I mean, that starts the minute you've put on a referee shirt. And when you start your career as a referee, you have to face all sorts of things. And one of the things that happened to me in Scotland was I thought I was doing quite well in the leagues in Scotland, until I got to the stage where if you get an assessor that doesn't like you, or if you get something that wants to push somebody else's barrel before yours, then that happens. Now, hopefully it doesn't happen so much here now, because I think we've addressed that. But it did happen then, and it got to the stage where I then decided, well, that was enough, and came to Perth in Australia. It's a great place, Perth, if any of you want to go there. It's the other side of the country, just in case you don't know that. And really, it wasn't going to referee here at all. Decided not to have had enough of it, came to Perth, and without the intention of refereeing, but after a month, and I'm sure it's the same with you guys, they couldn't get a fix, had to get it, had to be out there refereeing, and then took it on, and was fortunate that got me to where it got me in my career. So I'm very appreciative of the system here in Australia that got me there.
Yeah, it was, I guess it would be unusual for you to go, because for those of you that don't know, I see there was a couple of young faces out there before. I saw Bobby Crapnell out there, and a few others that have been around for a year or two. But Eddie refereed in the 98 World Cup finals, was it?
Yeah, France 98 World Cup. I was fortunate enough to be selected, and did 2 games in the middle. One game was the 4th official, and it was an awesome experience. And I wish and I hope that other referees can get to that as well. And Mark is obviously trying to push his way forward for the next one, and I wish him every success in that, because it's an experience that I'll never forget.
Tell us a little bit about how you started out. I understand you're an electrician in Newcastle. How did you get into refereeing?
It was bizarre. I went for football trials when I was younger down at Millwall in York, and I wasn't successful. I wasn't good enough. And it was my school teacher. He said to us, Mark, one day, he said, I don't think you're ever going to make it as a footballer. Why not try refereeing? So I did my exam, passed my exam at 16, and things developed. It was interesting because it happened so quick. So I never looked back and thought, oh, what am I doing? Why am I doing refereeing? And at 24, I was a Football League referee, which is semi-professional, but in the professional leagues. And then it just took off from there, and I was given the opportunity at 29 to be a full-time referee, and now 11 years later, and now 9 years on the FIFA list, I'm just gaining experience, and I set myself goals every year, and I'm still just turned 40, and I've got massive goals to try and achieve, and hopefully, one of them is to go to the European Championships next year in France.
Do you remember your first couple of games?
Yeah, and I was terrible. You learn every time, and I remember it was a junior match, and I couldn't control. I didn't know what to do. But then I suppose it's like driving a car. Once you get more and more experience, you become a better person and a better referee. And hopefully, I've had many experiences and I've seen many situations. Yes, I'm not perfect. Everything's about decision making, but hopefully I've developed into a better person and a better referee because of it.
The time that you've spent with the referees here, is there a general theme of questioning that they're asking you?
Yeah, it's interesting because they probably had many tuitions off TED about fitness and fouls, and I think referees get a little bit bored of that, and they just want an insight of what EPL is all about, the most difficult players, and the general refereeing questions, and what makes me, how do I keep fit, but also like why I do certain situations, and if they, like I said before, if they pick up one little bit. And it was interesting, I went to watch an under-15 tournament in Ipswich on Thursday, and I watched a young referee, and I was so happy today. I gave him some little bits of guidance, and he's ended up refereeing the final today, which he was amazed and proud, and just one or two little things, and he's becoming a better referee, and hopefully he'll take that on to future matches.
But going back to trying to establish yourself, can you give us a couple of examples of where you felt like bashing your head against a brick wall?
Still feel like I've bashed my head against a brick wall. It doesn't stop at any level, I think, and I don't like to go on about how women might be hitting a glass ceiling, but there are definitely more opportunities there for men than there are for women, and that's just reality. And we as women have to just keep chipping away at that ice block. But as I consider myself to be really quite fortunate, I didn't feel that I had too many obstacles in my way. I recognised that in my refereeing career and also in my instructing career, I've been actually quite fortunate, right place, right time, together with apparently some ability to do both. But I think that I arrived on the scene at a time where women's football was really starting to take flight, and I was surrounded by people with a lot of foresight who could see that women's football was going to really start taking off, and that they then needed to prepare somebody to keep up with that. And it's that constant play of catch up where the game is evolving, and therefore we as referees also need to evolve. And I think that because of course I started initially down in Victoria, and then I had people there who were really quite progressive in their thinking, and then decided to keep giving me chances and working me through the system. And then of course I moved here, and then everything just went into acceleration mode. So it.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say in both nationally and internationally that Brisbane female referees have really set the standard, and it certainly looks as if that's going to continue for some time to come. Now, finishing that subject, I want to go back to something Mark said last night. For those of you that weren't there, it was almost like they were queuing up to ask you questions. That's especially some of the young guys. And even though Ted said he's got to go, there were still one or two that just had to get the question in. I want to take you back to the early days. You've mentioned that you played. Were you any good?
No, I was terrible. That's why I turned to refereeing. I played junior football, and then I had the opportunity to go and play football on trials at Millwall, and then I went to York. And it was my school teacher. He said to us one day, he said, "Mark," he said, "I'm going to give you some advice." And I said, "What's the advice?" He said, "I want to quit playing football and try refereeing." So that was an opportunity to say you weren't good enough at football. So I turned to refereeing at 16. And we in England, we had a system where, it's a bit different now, but in the time it was, a class 3, you become a class 2, you become a class 1. And how you got between the 3 classes was, you were assessed, but you only had to be assessed once. So during the season, yes, you had to rely on club marks, but you got assessed, and if that assessment was good, you would then move up the categories. From 3 to 2 wasn't as big, but 2 to 1 was quite important, because you then moved into senior football of non-league, the local leagues, and then you go through the different leagues and the different standards. And I was fortunate that we had it was difficult because at the time when I got on refereeing in 1990, there was a lot of old referees, and young referees just weren't allowed to come into English refereeing. It was frowned upon. You didn't have the experience, you didn't have the knowledge, not like it is now, the support. There was no support back in 1990. We didn't have any academies, we didn't have these meetings. What was fascinating last night was the amount of learning you can achieve by turning up at these meetings. We never had that. Everything was self-induced. It was, you had to learn yourself, you had to focus on what you wanted to do, because there was nobody there to help. And I went through the Northern Leagues, and I was fortunate to become the youngest Football League referee in 24. And that's when it became difficult, because I was a young man in an environment which was tough. There was cameras, the exposure, but also the media exposure, where I was exposed because everybody was thinking about the youngest referee in England. Every time I made a mistake, always not good enough, and it really hurt. And once I got over that period of 1 or 2 years, I then realised that I could try and push on to try and become a Premier League referee. It was them few years that made us a better person and a better referee than I am now, because if I'd got promoted too quick, it probably would have cost us my career. So when I got onto the Premier League at 29, I felt it was the perfect moment to push my career on, and that's when I still learn and I want to learn, but I felt at that age it was the right time, and it actually helped English refereeing because things went well for us. They allowed more young referees to come through, every time, if things had gone wrong for us in England at that age, I think it would have been a big struggle for young referees to come forward, because the clubs and people within football want experience, and you can only get that experience by doing football matches. And it's interesting because we had a conversation in the car, and my season comprises of about 50 to 55 matches, maybe 30 to 32 as a referee in the Premier League, and maybe 5 or 10 as fourth officials, and then I did 13 matches in Europe. So we get a huge number of matches throughout the season, which gives me the experience, certainly, to learn and understand what's expected. And sometimes it's difficult when you're only getting 20 games a season to be able to get that experience where, for example, over 5 years, 100 matches, if you're doing 5 matches, maybe 40 or 50, and it's taken longer to get that experience through, and you're only going to get to the very, very top with experience and understanding, and you can only get that from doing matches. Yes, you can learn from other people's experiences, learn from videos, but till you get out there, under the environment and the stress levels, that's when you learn.
With the Premier League, how does it feel to be under that scrutiny?
It's always a difficult. Today is a bit of a release. I'm not used to this small crowds, for one, and yeah, the media scrutiny is difficult. It always will be. There's 34 cameras in a stadium, and you know for a fact that if you miss something, it's always going to be picked up on TV, and that's the life of the referee, and you have to live with that. There's no technology in place other than we have goal line technology in England, which is a big help to us. But you know, there's no technology to help us, so we've got to do the best we can, and we've got to work as a team, and we've got to, you know, assistant referees, and in Europe we'll have the additionals behind the goal, and we've got to work as a team and try and get as many decisions correct. Yeah, we're not going to be perfect, players aren't perfect, but we'll give it our best shot, and you know, we're professional in what we do. We prepare mentally, physically, everything about the game, and even I've prepared for this match. I've done a lot of homework on the teams, and interesting to hear the away team coach who's also from England, and you know, it's nice that I've done my homework. I know exactly what I'm going to do and prepare. I do that for every match.
Does it frustrate you that everyone around the ground gets more access to replays than you do?
It was interesting in the MCG. In England we can't have them replays. We're not allowed to. The club's not allowed to show the replays. But it was interesting in the MCG where they were showing the match actually live, and then they were showing recordings of incidents, which had its benefit. For sure, it had its benefit because we had one or two tight offsides, which when you look at them you think, wow, amazing decision from the assistant referee. But when it goes wrong, everybody can see it, and then you know within 2 minutes. But it also changes the feeling of the players, because if they see it, it can change the mentality, and as a referee you don't really want that. Yes, at half time players are going to get access to the information, of course they are, but what you don't want to change is the feeling on the pitch, because the game's hard enough to referee one person and two assistants without that extra burden. Yes, you know, I'm sure in future there'll be something developed where it'll help the referee, but at the moment we've got to get on with it.
Would you like to see that happen in the future?
I think it'll be after my time. I'm confident and sure. You know, we looked 20 years ago we didn't have mobile phones, and look at where now we're doing we're banking on mobile phones. Our whole life's on mobile phones, so life's changed, and I'm not going to be naive enough to not think that technology is going to come into football in some way, shape or form. We've gone goal line technology in England. It's a massive plus, a huge plus. We've had, I think it was 7 incidents last year where we would have got wrong, and it's straight to the watch, straight in the communication kit, and it's finished. Where technology probably is going to cause a downfall within football is the opinionated side of the game, where we can debate. Many people can debate, is it a penalty, is it a free kick, and we can still debate many decisions now where it's a matter of fact, brilliant. But also, just sometimes as a referee, you want to check something. And you know, at work, when I worked in the electrical business, I could check my work. It's the only industry that I can't check other than after the match when it's too late.
Yeah, Mark said to me last night that he still goes back to grassroots. How often do you do that?
When my wife lets us out of the house. But in general, no, I try and do it probably once every couple of months, because it's important for me. Because I'm in a controlled environment, Premier League. Even if I go and do a Champions League game, I've got these guys behind the goal, I've got 2 assistants, I've got a 4th official. I'm practically pampered, but actually it's important when I'm back out on grassroots, when I'm on my own. I haven't got the buzzer flags, I haven't got the communication kits, and I'm actually going back to basics, because one of the big things I learned, and it was in Colombia in 2011, it was interesting to see the referees throughout the world. I was used to not having comms. So in Colombia, they had a security issue, which meant the comms didn't work, and the referees were all over the place. They didn't know what to do without the comms kit, because the young referees had been through the systems with comms kit, and I was laughing because I was so used to not having comms kit, because I'm used to doing games without them. So that's what grassroots allows us to do, but also it gives us the experience, life experience. Gives us when, for example, our Sunday morning leagues, most of them have been out on a beer on a Saturday evening, so they're not happy on a Sunday morning, they're full of drinking. That gives us the experience to be able to deal with these people. So when I go through life, I actually start managing people in different ways, and it certainly helps you when you get onto the top level, when you've got these multi-millionaires who just have got no care for anything and they start abusing you. And it gives you the experience to go, actually, I'll deal with it in my way, and in a certain way that doesn't inflame the situation.
Thank you for that. Eddie, take you back to the early days in Glasgow and surrounding areas, to give you an appreciation of how difficult it was. I had 1 or 2 games in Glasgow, and you turn up with your polished moulded boots or screw-ins or whatever, and you're faced with this red ash, and usually about 3 yards between the penalty area and the touchline, and then you go out there and you're just dealing with animals, which is what happened quite a few times. Can you give us a couple of stories back in your early days?
Yeah, look, we're quite fortunate to have the facilities we have here in Australia with lush green fields and things like that. It's certainly not that case. When I was growing up as a referee, I started at 15, and because I thought I was quite a good player at that time, but I got an injury on my knee and had to stop. And so the next thing was my younger brother was playing a game, and I'm looking for a referee, and somebody threw me a whistle. He says, "Here, Eddie, want to do that?" And that was me hooked on that since the age of 15. And I remember my first game, and this was a junior match. I think it was under 10s or something like that. And the game had to have a result. So we had to have kicks from the penalty mark to decide the winner. And these are under 10s, remember. So we go through this process of doing the kicks. And obviously one team has scored enough goals so we don't have to carry on. But this young fella who wanted to take this kick, and he didn't have to take this kick because the game was already decided, and I wouldn't let him take this kick because I was a stickler for the laws. That's what it said, he'll take it. So anyway, his father, who was a 6-foot tall gentleman, and he had an actual neck brace on. So he was quite scary, and remember I'm only 15. And so this young boy wanted to take this kick, and I said, "No, you don't have to take it, son, the game's finished." So this fella came on, and he stood over me and he says, "I want my boy to take the kick. He's not scored a goal in the game, so he wants to take it. So you'll let him take it." And I says, "No, I won't." I says, "Because we don't have to." And he got very angry, very upset, started shouting, and nearly physically assaulted me. But then I said, "Okay, we'll let him take it. Just go off, put the ball down." And said to the boy, "Right, come on, let's go." And before he got it, I picked the ball up and ran. So I still got the thing through that he wasn't taking his kick, and that guy couldn't run after me. I was too fast for him at that time. So these things do happen. And going back to what Mark says, it's very important that we look at these grassroots referees, because that's where you learn your refereeing. As you go further up the chain, the more professional the game becomes. It really should be a little bit easier as you go up the chain. But where you learn your refereeing is out in the paddock on a Sunday morning or a Saturday afternoon, refereeing juniors and amateurs and things like that. So it's great to hear that Mark goes back and does the basics of C calls in a Sunday morning paddock game, because that's where we learn things, guys. And the more we can do that, the better.
Chris, how did you get started refereeing anyway?
Yeah, I grew up in a really small country town in Victoria, and we had a women's team for a year. I played in that, or at least I tried to, and I sucked. I was pretty bad. And then the team disbanded in, I think it was '89, simply because it was our last year of high school, and people wanted to concentrate more on their high school certificate, or HSC. But I still wanted to keep being involved. And I remember going to Ballarat with my dad, to some Ballarat meeting, and there was a little table in the corner saying, you know, come be a referee. So I thought, oh, that's one way to stay involved. It might be something good to do. And so off I went. I sat through I still remember the little club room that I did the exam in, and interestingly, there were 2 other women who did that with me, but they fell by the wayside. You know, and I always wondered what made them stop. Did they feel there were no opportunities? Because there still are plenty of opportunities for women referees. But yeah.
I want to touch on the mentor situation, because in conversation with a few of the younger lads that are here today, is that they've obviously realised the importance of having a more experienced mentor to guide them and give them some insight into the experience they've gained, as Mark was touching on before. Was there anybody that you could, apart from obviously once you came up here, but before that you could really say was instrumental in your career path?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we as referees are actually made up, we're a conglomerate, we're a little piece of this mentor and a little piece of that mentor. I don't think that we can be a clone of somebody else. You have your own style, you have your own personality, and you're stealing a little bit of information from here, there and everywhere else. So for me, there was when I moved to Melbourne to study, I joined one of the branches down there because it was still the double ASRF for those of us who were a bit longer in the tooth and we remember those days. And so there was a guy there called Terry Bywater who kind of took me under his wing and would do a lot of matches together with me, and I think he was actually quite instrumental in my earlier years. John Rutter as well, for any of you who remember him. He was back then National League assistant referee. I met him when I actually moved to Melbourne as well and started becoming involved in more senior football. Roger May, rest his soul. So there have been a lot of different people who've been involved, and also people overseas as well. Sonia Denoncourt, who was my boss up until last year, but she was kind of fun to be around, and she'd done a lot of matches, high-profile matches in the US and in South America. So she was a bit of a mentor as well in both camps, both as a referee and an instructor.
So, Mark, you talked about the time before you actually got to Class 1, and it sounds as if it was very much a lonesome task. How did you make that transition, apart from your obvious ability as a referee on the park? Was there anybody in particular that got you over the line?
You're right, it was very lonely. What's interesting now is, this is where football and refereeing has changed, is the sport network's different. Even now, I'll just go even to the top level, I've got a mentor. Surprise, everybody's thinking, why have I got a mentor? It's interesting, I use Steve Bennett from England, and he's been a good influence on me as a person. Yes, decision making is decision making, but he's actually looking for the finer edges to make us a better person, and that's what a good mentor does. Because what I'll do is I'll analyse the games and I think, I've done this good, I've done this good, I've done this good. But he'll actually help us improve, because sometimes as a referee, you get this tunnel vision where you think you're better, or you've done something good, but he wants to make it even better. So even now, even though I'm at the top of my game, I've still got a mentor, which is important. And I've had a mentor for a while, even in Europe when I was going through the system at Anders Frisk. Anders took me under his wing. It was a guideline under UEFA that we had to have a mentor. And he helped us, he watched me games in England, but not just making the transition from English football to international football, which, till you make that transition, you don't realise how big and difficult it is. You've got the travel, you've got the different types of food, which is also difficult. You think, why food? But I've had food on a day before a game, seafood, and I've been ill on the day of the game. Simple little things, and they give us that education. For example, one of you guys, if there's only 3 or 4 of you, say 3 of you, to make sure that you all eat something different. So if there's some dodgy food, not everybody's ill, everybody knows, but that's a true story. It's different when you're in Europe, of course, because the food's different, but when you went out to Asia and different parts of the world, you have to make sure that you all ate something different, so not everybody was ill. So we had all this mentor, he's given us guidelines, but even going back to with class too. I used to watch a lot of youth matches like Newcastle Youth, Sunderland Youth, and I used to watch the referees because they were the class 1 and I wanted to be a class 1. So I watched what they did good, and I used to write it down in a little book. I think I might have the book somewhere, or my mum might have it. But I'd look and I would analyse their performance, not decision making, but I would look at their movement, I would look at their positioning, I would look at how they dealt with players, and I would put a tick or a cross, crosses that I didn't like, and ticks that I would like. And now I would try and put that into practice into my next game, and if it worked for us, I would build all of this up, and that's what made me my makeup of my refereeing career, where I took a piece of this, a piece of this, and a piece of this, and that's helped me become me. Where if I decided to be, for example, George Courtney, lived in my region and went to the World Cup, if I tried to be George Courtney, I would probably have failed because he had his style, and his style worked. It might not work for me, but what he found successful, or the way he managed games of football, I tried to do it, and if it worked for me, I would keep it. So things have moved on for sure. We've got, for the young referees coming through in the Premier League, we've got a lot of support staff, and even some of the senior referees now will sit with some of the younger referees. We're now talking that I'll watch sometimes a Football League referee. I'm asked to go and watch, and giving me feedback of what I think, and hopefully I can give a little bit of advice to the next generation of referees who want to make it to the top. It might be just something about the positioning, maybe something about the fitness, and sometimes it's the soft issues like dedication. Because if you're not dedicated at any level, you'll never reach the top, or you'll never make it to the next step.
Yeah, Doug, I think it's important that we have that network of mentors in our field, and as Chris said, it's not to be a clone of anybody. It's to have your own personality on the game, but look to these other referees and see what you can get out of them. And as Mark says, take a bit from there, a bit from that, and try and incorporate your game. If it works, fine. If it doesn't, put it away and get someone else to look at things. When I was growing up in Scotland, I looked at, there was 3 referees that I admired and tried to see what they were doing. Some of you guys might know the names. There was an Englishman. Well, he was in the English league, but I think he was a Welshman. And I don't know if any's probably know who I'm talking about. Went to the World Cup.
We've talked about this incident. Brazil were playing, and as the corner was coming in, he blew for time up, or I think it was half time.
Yeah, what was the guy's name?
Clive Thomas.
Clive Thomas, yeah. I thought he was a great referee in his time, and I got things wrong. That was one of them, and but took things from him. And the other two guys from Scotland were Brian McGinley and Bob Valentine, and both of those guys are still involved in Scottish refereeing. Bob is an assessor, and I think he's in UEFA as well, and things like that. So you can look at referees around the world and take particular things from them and try and incorporate it, but don't be a clone. I didn't want to be a Brian McGinley, I didn't want to be a Bob Valentine, I wanted to be an Eddie Lenny and make my own mark, but try and incorporate something if it works for you.
And in your case, you had to do it twice because you had to get to Australia, and had to start again almost. I wanted to have a chat with Mark beforehand, and I'm sure you all want to know a bit of background to what happens at a big game. And the one I was thinking about in particular was last season. I might mention it at the start, the Bayern-Barcelona game. We're just going to ask Mark just to talk us through a bit of the preparation and also what happened on match day.
Yeah, it was probably one of the most important games of my career last season. It was something that, as a referee, when the appointment comes out, you're absolutely excited as anything, as you can imagine. To referee probably the 2 biggest club sides in the world in the second leg of a semi-final, that gives you massive trust from UEFA that they rate you very highly, but you also want to deliver it, of course. So as the appointment comes out, we find out a week before. The media find out, and the outside world find out 2 days before, which is, I think, standard throughout the world. But in general, we get our flights. I knew I was going to Bayern Munich. I can't tell anybody. I'm excited as anything. But it gives us a chance to watch the first leg, because I want to do my preparation. And I start preparing and I watch the match fully. I watch it again the following day. And I make notes. I make notes about players, tactics, who played in the match. what the referee did good, what the referee didn't do so well, in my opinion. And I analyse it all, and I've done that twice. And then I start preparing my fitness levels, I start preparing my nutrition, which is important now, what I eat and what I drink, less alcohol a few days before. But I make sure that I prepare the best I can. We fly out a day before. Europe's not so difficult because the flight's 2 hours. I know Australia logistics is a bit different, of course. But a few hours we're in Munich. And when we arrive at the stadium, arrive at the country, we have to be there by 5 p.m. the day before. That's the rule. But now a lot of guys will want to turn up a little bit before because we have the option to train in the stadium, or we'll have the option to train. I very rarely go to the stadium. I've been to the stadium before in Munich. But also logistics is a big problem because you've got the teams wanting to train that evening in the stadium. And I don't think it's right that the referee is impacting on their preparation. So I'll either do it at the hotel or we'll find a small stadium outside. But what's interesting is I believed I'd prepared fully for this match. I've got all the kit ready, I made sure everything was ready, I've got everything spot on, I've got all my tactics. I'm thinking, this is it, I've got everything, I'm on top of my game, I'm ready for this match. The following day, Luigi Kleiner, who was my boss at UEFA, he was my referee observer. And he'd give us some insight, and he just took us to a new level. This guy, who for me was the best referee in the world, anybody that doesn't know him, he's the bald guy from Italy, who's got scary eyes. But actually he's one of the nicest guys I've ever met because he wanted to give some insight and he wanted to help me to learn to be a better referee. And it doesn't matter, certainly I'm not arrogant, but he thought, even though it's a second leg of a Champions League, he wanted to make me even better prepared. And what he did was, it was over lunch, because he had to go to the security meeting where you don't go anymore. He came back, the colours are fine, Mark, the teams are happy that you're refereeing, and blah, 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 blah. So then we sat down and he opened his laptop up, and we're having lunch. I thought, what's he going to do? I'm prepared for this match, I've got everything in order. And he opened his laptop, he says, Mark, I've got 6 clips to show you. And I'm thinking, sound, I know that's what he said, I'm prepared. And he says, Mark, he said, were you aware of the little number 6 from Bayern Munich? I said, no. So he started showing us the clips, and I went, oh my God. And basically what it was a simple little thing. The number 6 from Bayern Munich was always involved in these 6 clips, and because he was the smallest player on the pitch, he was marking Piqué, who was Barcelona's tallest player. But all the rest of Barcelona players are little small players. So I thought to myself, why is the little player from Bayern Munich marking the biggest player for Barcelona? And then when I watched the clips, it was obvious. How have I not prepared? How have I not seen this? Basically, the little number 6 was standing in an offside position at every attacking free kick. And he was offside, yeah. But he wasn't interfering with play. But what he was doing was, as Piqué was coming back, because Piqué wanted to beat the ball because he was the tallest player, he used to just block him. So Piqué couldn't go for the ball, but all the tall players from Bayern Munich were up against the small players from Barcelona, and they were getting free headers. So I went, my God, I thought, what a tactic this is. So I thought, I've got it in here. So in the game itself, after 16 minutes, this scenario was happening. The little number 6 in an offside position. So I go to him and I go, because his English is probably worse than mine, I go to him, I'm watching you. There's another bit of body language, he goes, I'm watching you, because not everybody speaks English. And he said, no problem, no problem. So I can hear the fourth official's microphone. And basically, I can hear the Barcelona coach in broken English saying, this is a tactic, this is a tactic. The referee needs to be strong. And the fourth official says, calm down, watch. I think, hold on, I need to get this one right. So as the ball gets floated in, the little number 6 just deliberately fouled Piqué. So I blew, it was just a basic free kick, an absolute basic free kick. Nobody was going to complain. And the little number 6 looked at us, and the Barcelona, Piqué looks at us, and Piqué has just gone, oh my God, how did you know about this tactic? And this was the difference between me and the best referee in the world. The best referee in the world prepared completely. He knew everything, he studied tactics, he studied the teams. And even if you go back to grassroots, if I take you back to grassroots, and you think to me, how can I prepare for a match? How can I? You actually can. Because guess what? When they play each other the second time, you can actually ring the referee up. You know who's referee. You can find out who's referee. You can get it off the internet. You can ring that referee up and say, what problems did you have in the first game? this game I've refereed on Sunday, do you think I not know anything about the teams? I've actually been speaking to Jared, I've been speaking to local referees to find out about these teams, and everyone says one thing, the long ball. But in general, I'm doing my homework, and even though people see me on the TV or whatever, I'm still preparing as best I can. And when I go back to the grassroots, you can ring the referee up and say, what happened in the first match?
When you're making a decision, a crucial decision during a game, and then you get that lingering doubt, maybe I've got that wrong. How do you deal with that?
We have 2 sports psychologists. We're fortunate in the Premier League that the company I work for, PGMOL, employ 2 sports psychologists, and they're a massive help. Over the years when I was young, I struggled. I would make one mistake, then I would make another, then another, then another. I couldn't switch from making the one bad decision to then finishing the game on a positive. And that's what they learn you to do, is to park it, move on, and move on to the next one. And I suppose that's when you see a good striker, a good centre forward, he might miss an open goal, but he's got the positive mind to try and score 2 or 3 goals. The problem in refereeing is a striker can miss an open goal and score a hat-trick and he's a hero. A referee makes one mistake and they're killed. It doesn't matter if it's the first minute or last minute. You could make 20 great calls in a game, but people remember that one, and that's something that as referees you've got to learn to deal with. And if you can learn to deal with it, then you can become a top referee, because top referees have got a way to deal with it and make one, just make one, not another one. And you know, when you're young, you make one and then you make another and then another. That's just human life, and that's growing up as well. I've met a lot of young referees over the last few days, and they'll turn into adults, and they're still developing the life as well, and they'll get life experiences. And you know, the support from Football Queensland and Football Brisbane will give them that opportunity in future years to develop into good referees.
When you meet Joe Bloggs on the street, have you ever been threatened?
Not on the street, no. I think because of social media now, that's a difficult side of our industry now, and people will, not just referees, but I think in general, people who are in the spotlight, people are jealous or whatever they want to be, but they'll say things, but you've got to be able to deal with it. Your family's got to be strong, and you've got to be strong, because it's, you know, I do my best, and you know, hopefully today you'll see what I want to try and achieve, and all I want is a good game of football and to be a part of it. And if I can just be that little cog in the wheel, that's what I want to be. And I enjoy being out there, I enjoy refereeing, but yeah, there's always going to be people who are going to be negative. That's just life, that's human life. But you know, I enjoy what I do, and I love what I do, and you know, it's to be, you know, to come to Australia and have the opportunity. My God, you know, I'm English and living a dream here.
I just wanted to ask Eddie, because coming from Glasgow, you'll all be aware of Billy Connolly, and the fact he's from Glasgow and one of the funniest guys around. And there's another guy coming through called Kevin Bridges, who, if you haven't seen him, make a point of it, because this guy's a riot. And the humour that happens, particularly in Glasgow, I'm sure in Newcastle and other areas, but in Eddie's career, how you can think of an example when humour diffused the situation?
Yeah, look, the laws of the game are there to be enforced, but it's how you interpret and apply them and things like that. So, I mean, not everything is black and white, and there is occasions where when humour comes into it, where you can diffuse a situation, and talking to the players. I think we've got to get away from this it's them and us situation, and we have to be more communicative with players. Not actually explaining your decisions, that's not what we're there for, but actually talking to them and maybe helping them, as well as telling them what they should be doing, and but they're telling you what you should be doing. So you've got to get that rapport with players, and humour is one of the ways you can do that. And that's different from laughing at players. I know it's very easy when somebody does something wrong to laugh at them, but a smile goes a long way, and I'm sure you've heard that for many years. A smile goes a long way in a game, and just basically talking to them and things like that. So there's been numerous ones where somebody's done something wrong, and you turn around to them and you think, I'm a bad referee. And says, I would score that, or things like that. It's got to be in the moment. It's got to be in the moment. There's no set script that you should be doing, but it just happens, and you've got to have that personality to do that. So.
Chris, in the tournament that you've just been at, the World Cup, was there any opportunity to talk to the teams beforehand? I imagine that you wouldn't involve the referees in that, but were you involved in actually talking to the teams and trying to lay down some guidelines as to what was appropriate?
Yeah, FIFA takes the integration between referees and the teams quite seriously. So in the lead up to the World Cup this year, I had prepared some clips with, under some topics. I guess it's a little bit like hot topics for women's football. And we had and I chose very clear and obvious examples of what's careless, what's reckless, what's excessive force, what's striking at each level of those. Offside was a particular issue because of the new interpretations. So there were some things there that we had to cover, and each instructor had a few teams that we had to go and visit. So I ended up going to Moncton, which is on the very east coast, as far away from Vancouver as you could possibly get. It's something like a 6-hour flight, where I had to speak to 4 teams there about all these topics, and we give them a copy of the topics as well. And it's really professionally all set out, and we all, as instructors, we all have to sit down and decide: is this clear enough to demonstrate what we want to, what we want to say? What's our message? Is this illustrating the point? So there's a lot of lead up to all of that, and there's definitely more interaction between not so much the referees and the teams, but the instructors. We definitely don't want the referees involved with the teams, particularly if they're going to be refereeing, of course. So we protect the referees and say, no, that's... And I had a request also from 2 referees who had been asked by their national teams to go and talk to them even before they left for Canada. Now, I can't tell them absolutely no, but my advice would be, if this goes well, you're lucky. If it goes bad, it's going to be a train wreck. Because they're referees, they're not instructors, they're not used to instructing about the laws of the game, they're used to making sure that teams adhere to it. But it's a little different as an instructor, so my advice was ask one of your instructors to do it rather than one of you. Just stay out of it, that's the best way to do it. Just keep your nose clean.
Mark, I just wanted to touch on you talked about the media, the exposure in the media. Do the PGMOL give you any sort of training or feedback or advice on how to deal with that?
Yeah, we get a lot of training. It's probably now more than ever, because media in football is huge. For example, the new TV deal in the Premier League is worth £5 billion, and when I first started in the Premier League it was worth 300 million. So you can imagine the money that's in football now, and now they want cameras and goal nets. If you ever watch rugby league in England, and I don't know what it's like in Australia, they would love a camera on our forehead, which looks rather silly on the referees. They want cameras everywhere, and with that is the media. Scrutiny becomes harder and harder. Decisions are becoming harder and harder. We get training, but the media would like us to speak after a match, which people have got positives about it, people have got negatives about it. And I had this discussion with a journalist in Melbourne, and he said, well, we'd like you to speak after a game. And the problem is, when I've had a great game, the media don't want to know us. They never want to know us. They only ever want to discuss mistakes. So what's the point? What's the point? Because all I'm going to do is give them a stock answer of what I've given and within the laws of the game. They don't really care about you as a referee. All they want is controversy, and that's what makes the headlines it is today. But it's like small things. It's not speaking to journalists, because that's easy. If I'm instructed to speak to a journalist, I know how to handle that. But the hardest bit for any young referee, and the advice I'm going to give people, is you've got Facebook, there's Twitter, there's social media. And it's interesting because we'll come off FIFA tournaments, and FIFA are still, and UEFA are still strong on the message that, yes, you've got Facebook, yes, people have got Twitter, and they're not telling you to stop. But who cares about your life? Who wants to know what you're having for your dinner? Why are you going to see your friends, and what we've still got is, and it happened in the Olympics, we've got girls who are revealing appointments that haven't been released to the outside world. And there's things coming out of the camp about other referees that they put on social media. Once that message goes on, it's seen by everybody and it's there for life. You can Google it. So what's the point putting the message out? And I haven't got Facebook. I've got plenty of fake Facebook accounts, but they're not mine for sure. So if anybody's asked a request, it's certainly not me. I don't do Twitter, and I just don't do any social media. And it's not because I want to be boring. It's the fact is I don't see any benefit. I don't have to promote anything. I'll come to speak to you guys to promote refereeing. I don't have to promote it to the outside world. And yes, I know social media is evolving. Kids are different to what I was like. I didn't even have, there was no mobile phones when I was a child. You had to post everything. There was no emails. Now I know the world's changing and people need stuff. But in refereeing, you've got to be, I use the word squeaky clean. You've seen an example with me and Ed Sheeran. That made national news. It made front page of newspapers. How trivial was that to make world headlines? And it's something that I'm learning all the time, and I've found it difficult throughout my career to avoid controversy because I'm me. I'm Mark Clattenburg. That's me makeup. I want to be me. I like a beer. I used to like women, not as much now, because it causes half my problems. but it's just making sure that you're professional in what you do and how you're professional off the field, you know. And this is something that, you know, you're going to have to learn and get training on, because it doesn't matter how much I speak to people and talk about off the field is more important than on the field. I can be the best referee on the field and making world-class decisions, but that made the headlines, not be good decisions, be negativity off the field. And that's something that I'm always wanting to learn and improve on, because that's where it causes most of your downfall is off the field. We talk about tournaments, and you know, I've seen referees, they've been on the alcohol for days and days and days, and then they turn up the referee and FIFA no, UEFA no. And I'll tell a little story about alcohol. And because Kalina doesn't like alcohol, and in the Euros in Poland and Ukraine, there was no alcohol allowed. And everybody was like, what human being would love a beer or love a glass of wine? And Kalina decided one night to announce that he would provide red and white wine on the table for guys to have a drink with the meal. But the problem was he put the wine bottles on his table, so nobody dared go to his table to take the wine bottles, so nobody drank still. So it was just a effect. But the only advice I'd give people is, yes, work hard on the pitch, but be careful off the pitch and be as professional as you can.
Yeah, it's amazing how often I've heard that. And to be serious for a minute, we're just coming to the conclusion of this segment. But Facebook has its values, as we know, because we've got our own groups within the refereeing in Brisbane and Queensland, and it has its own benefits for sure. But there's one or two times I see things that are posted by people that are probably here today, and to be serious just for a second, I'd be very, very careful, one or two of you, as to what's going on. It might have nothing to do with refereeing, but it could come back to bite you. So,
when I found out that I was interviewing, I asked around all my friends if there were any particular questions that they wanted me to ask you. And they all said, why is he biased against our club? And not just one club, it was every club.
Yeah, I think the only team I'm not biased to is Newcastle, because I never referee them. But as a Newcastle fan, that's probably a good thing. But it's like that in everything. You know, I referee a team and we're super analysed. People don't understand. We don't have assessors now in the stadium. We are monitored by every decision on DVD, and the scrutiny, even throw-ins, they're scrutinising every decision. So our accuracy rate, I think, was around about 97-98%, which is very high in any industry, to make as many correct calls in a game. And I think we make probably on average 350 calls in a game, and to get 97-98% correct isn't bad. But that's not biased. It's just people's perception towards, you know, their team. And you know, I might make a call against Man United. I think one day I give them 3 penalties against Man United for Liverpool, and that wasn't biased. I could have given 4. I missed one. And it's not biased, just people's perception.
Today's game, you said you've done your research. What are you expecting?
A physical match, for one. It's the top 2 sides in the division, which is important. And I'm expecting a good football match. The standard will be high. I've watched a Premier League match over the last few days, and the standard's very good. And I'm expecting a tight match, a tough match. And especially with a away team having an English coach, I expect that style of football where in England we'll allow a lot more physical contact. And hopefully it'll be interesting to see how I'm going to judge it, because do I referee the English style or do I referee it with a little bit of continental? And when I referee in Champions League, of course I referee slightly different to the English Premier League, because English Premier League is what the product it is, and it's one of the most exciting leagues in the world because referees allow a little bit more physical contact. And I'll have to judge how much physical contact I'm going to allow, but hopefully everybody enjoys the occasion in the game and let the best team win.
Well, Mark, it's a thrill to have you here. I hope you have a great game today, and thanks very much for your time.
Excellent. Thank you very much.